Awesome.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Testing 1 2 3 4.
She upped us. Like our mutual friend,
Yeah.
she was telling the story. I'm like, oh no!
Yeah, she's like, yeah, I was listening to your podcast around the house, and then we got to a certain one about horror movies, and I had to stop it because my 3-year-old was there.
Oh no!
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh boy,
That's character.
I'm
Indeed.
I'm that person now.
Don't worry. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. The youngin' didn't see your face when you said it, so
Nope,
there's no
she
connection
will
with
not.
that.
She will not know.
So it's oh good. We got a lot of people in here right now.
Yeah. That's,
All right.
okay.
All right.
I'm just doing my duty as the social person.
All right. As Hannah's.
Scooch forward, will you?
Okay.
Oh, it's gonna squeak. That's fine.
No, it's okay. I
Okay.
picked up some squeakiness. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
like
okay, great.
I'm planning to expand
It's gonna be
things
candid,
lately.
so
don't worry. As Hannah's doing that. Welcome guys to another episode of the General Geekery Podcast, the podcast where we geek out about all the things we love to geek about and just talk as passionately as we want to. As always, I'm Donald Kaczynski. With me, as always, my right-hand partner in crime, Hannah Kubiak.
What up? What up?
And we are not alone today. We've got some very, very special guests that we've talked about bringing on for a while.
We are not alone.
Indeed, we have worked with them in the past in projects in theater and everything in between. Two great friends of ours. I'd like to please welcome Thomas and Maggie. Thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Very excited.
Yes,
For sure.
I know. Like we wanted you guys on like as soon as like we started plotlining like some certain topics, which is one we're talking about today.
Ramen consumption.
Again with the ramen.
I love ramen.
Oh,
Ramen is great. We have some recommendations.
well, we'll trade that soon. We'll trade that soon.
Derailing already. So
No,
sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. We're notorious for it.
If you
We're
knew
notorious.
the risks that happen just because I think I'm funny, you.
You are funny. You sell yourself too short. But today we are talking about probably one of the most critically acclaimed authors of all time. One that I'm a big fan of. Thomas right here is basically rocking back and forth in giddiness, chomping at the bit, wanting to talk about this.
I'm so ready.
All hail.
Today-
All hail.
Today we are talking about the works and the legacy of the one and only J.R.R. Tolkien, aka the author of the Middle-earth series of books such as The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and has inspired generations of imagination, creativity, have impacted so many people from artists to filmmakers to actors to pretty much everything. He basically was one of the earliest world builders of fiction. So, before we dive into what we love about Tolkien, we should probably talk about Tolkien a little bit. So, of course, he served in the British military during World War II.
World War One.
World War One. Okay, thank you for reclarifying on that. During
Jumped on that.
one of the World Wars.
Yes.
One of the World Wars. Thank you. I don't have notes in front of me, so I'm just doing this off the top of my head. But he served during that. He went on to become a professor at University of, I think it was Oxford. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't like a English or like a literature professor. It was more along the lines of like linguistics and language, right?
Yes.
Because like that's like one of the things like he's known for, like in his world building, is that all the different languages he created for all the different races. The Dwarvish, the Black speech for the orcs and all that. Elvish.
I will not utter it here, but
Yeah.
That is a language of Mordor, the language of
we do
which
not
I
utter here.
yeah.
But Elvish, which is one of the most iconic outside of just the geek world.
Absolutely, it's taught as university classes in college.
It's insane.
yeah, you can
Like
learn
there are select
Elvish.
there are select colleges that do that. Like it's incredible the impact that it has. And while at university, he was a member of a I forget the organization, like the group that he was a part of. It was a group of authors and literary specialists.
The Inkling.
The Inklings. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. The Inklings. One of the members being Chronicles of Narnia author C.S. Lewis.
Yes.
One who had C.S. Lewis had an impact on my early life, while Tolkien had an impact on my adult life, but more on that in a bit. But yeah, they would always like grade students' essays, talk about like the literary works and everything like that, and even like exchange their own works in between. Sometimes even using their students' old parchments to write down their thoughts and ideas, because of course writing materials and all that was super expensive at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So and all that came to pass when he released The Hobbit, originally a children's book.
Yeah.
There was no clear plan, like according to what I read, like he was going to be making Lord of the Rings connect with The Hobbit, but then when Lord of the Rings came out, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen or read the Middle-earth books or movies.
There are such people, I've heard.
I know I know there are such people, but just spoiler alert for that right now. But yeah, eventually became interconnected, and it became this giant world.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And it would even expand like beyond his death, with his son taking on the role of releasing some of his unpublished works with
Christopher.
Yes.
God rest his soul.
who recently passed late last year. But yeah, like finer details on certain characters, like the history, the ages, 4 ages. Like it's insane.
The entire expansive mythology. It's just it's absurd how much he created this entire world mythology just out of his own head.
And so in depth.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And
So much.
And he wasn't even like, technically he wasn't really an author as much as he was a linguistics expert starting off and just building off of that. It's crazy to think how it's 2020 now, and the first books came out in the 40s, 50s, right around.
The Hobbit came out in the 30s.
The 30s. Okay.
And
I feel like the Lord of the Rings is like in the 50s.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings would probably be in the
60s.
50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it. This all started with The Hobbit back in like the 30s, right around. And look, like 80 to 100 years later, we are all still talking about how impactful this work has been. So, off of that, before we gush over certain stuff about it, I think we should really take a moment to like look into like how each of us got into his works.
Oh my gosh.
Whether it be anyway. So, who would like to start?
I mean,
One of our guests?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thomas, how did you
Got a
first?
lot.
Yeah.
How did you first come across Tolkien's works?
So I first read The Hobbit as a recommendation from my mom, who was the reader, at least as far as fiction goes, the reader in my family when I was really young, and recommended pretty much all the books that I read, when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and before that just devoured everything. And so one of the ones that I got from her was The Hobbit, read through that, and immediately became just obsessed. I had read, Chronicles of Narnia before that, and the Prydain Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander,
Nice.
which is based on Welsh mythology.
Prydain? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I've read those too.
Right. So right around that age of like 7 or 8 years old, I was just absorbing all of this mythologically based world building fantasy.
That's a great age to start absorbing that.
It is.
Yeah.
And so what happened then is, I read The Hobbit, and as with everything that I was reading, I wanted more. I wanted more. And my mom told me, yes, there are more books. There's The Lord of the Rings. She also said I was probably still too young at that point to read them. I felt very challenged by that.
Yeah.
And so I read them anyway. I finished The Return of the King when I was 10 years old. And then after that, tried diving into the Silmarillion, got through it, but it was that one was so dense and difficult to get through that it wasn't until later that I started diving back into that one again. But I reread The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings several times before college when a group of friends and I started reading them every year. And so for the last 6 years, I think 6 or 7 years, I've reread them annually.
You've taken after Christopher Lee in that case.
Yeah.
It's just every, like, starting in August, I do August, September, October, November. I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, one book a month, and it's
Nice.
I get more out of it every time. And there's always something that happens either while I'm reading them or in the months leading up to reading them that gives me a new perspective. Which is, something that's really, really cool about these books is just the depth and complexity of the world he created. The more that you learn about him and the world that he created beyond just those 4 books adds so much texture to the stories themselves. And I feel so ashamed. The only one of the 3 new Silmarillion novels that Christopher Tolkien helped put out, Children of Húrin, Beren Luthien, and The Fall of Gondolin, I've only read the Children of Húrin. I have to catch up on the other 2. I know. I'm so ashamed of myself.
No, you're good.
I have to read those. Like, I have to get my hands on the books and read them now because
We should do, like, a discussion group. Because I want to read those too, but I haven't even read the Silmarillion yet. I read the first chapter a couple of times, and then I would get to the history stuff, and I get all really confused.
And well, the wonderful thing about these new books existing is that the Silmarillion itself, it wasn't published until after Tolkien died.
Yeah.
And so it was compiled by Christopher Tolkien and his editors and publishers as just a way to get all of this other stuff that he had written out there.
It would have been a crime had it not been released.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
But as a result, it's not. It doesn't have the refined touch that he would have put on it himself if he had lived long enough to publish it and finalize everything. And there are inconsistencies in it itself because they basically just took all of his notes and tried to clean them up and put them into a linear form.
He tried to do that with my notes.
Right? No, exactly. And think about how much stuff they would have had to go
I
through
know. Oh my gosh.
to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the point being, I started really young and never looked back.
Good.
That was a kind of a inverse kind of with me because when I was a kid, I grew up on C.S. Lewis's books. So Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, all that. That was my first real foray into mythological fiction works, and it was actually encouraged by my second grade teacher that to continue his books. I was one of the few that actually continued along with that. And around the same time is when the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy was being released. So, of course, I had gone to see these films, and my imagination was captured and everything like that. It wasn't until I got into around middle school and high school when I sat down and read Lord of the Rings. And it was just a couple of chapters at a time. I actually took up a lot of my study hall time and lunch breaks in middle school and high school just to read through them, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, because it's weird going to read the original source book material after seeing the films and like noticing the differences as the other way around, as most people do. And I'm like, wow, where was this? When was that? Like, how? What? Where? When? Why? And so...
Where have you been all my life?
Exactly. And so, like, I don't read it as often as other people. Unfortunately, I don't have copies of it myself. I honestly need to change that.
Bloody hell, man. Why did you not say?
I know, judge me.
I'm not judging you.
No, we want to help you.
I'm not judging you. I just want to make it right.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
But
Yeah.
It is we who are responsible for this.
But it was also like during that. But it was also during that time, like in like when I. They're just. But it's also during that time of like high school and everything like that when I started looking back on like more stuff. Like I wanted like background stuff and like so much different stuff I enjoy. It was when I was reading original novels and stuff, and I was also getting huge into like old Japanese anime and manga when I started doing like research on other stuff like that. When I was looking into the backstory of like the Lord of the Rings stuff, and I found all the material that Tolkien had left behind and that his son Christopher published out after his death. Yeah. And I was noticing like the little notes and everything like that. I'm like, oh, this is so neat. There's that. I'm a person who loves backstory. I've always loved backstory and character development like so much, and so I appreciate Tolkien like having such an impact of like opening my mind to like expanded universe and like backstory. His works were the first time I got that appreciation for my aspect of geekiness. Mm-hmm. I love little tidbits. It's the small little finer details that help create the bigger picture.
Nice. I love it.
Yes. Maggie, Hannah?
Go for it. We'll just go in order here.
Yeah? Okay.
All right, Hannah?
So, I actually, when I was really, really, really little, I lived in San Jose, so I know that I was like 4 or 5. My mom and my dad read The Hobbit to me.
Oh.
So, yeah, so literally, I don't remember a time when I didn't know the story, basically. So I don't remember what it was like the first time I read it and what I thought. I just remember it being part of my brain as it came into consciousness, you know? And so I yes. And basically the first time I experienced them was when my mom and dad would read the books aloud to me. And it was probably one of the things that kept me sane when I was little and we moved and there was sort of this rough patch with my family and stuff. So it's kind of, those stories are kind of a part of that, where I think that sort of started my inclination to, you know, when things are rough, go to a story, basically. So that's where all of that came from. And I would say that I'm one of those read it every year kind of people.
Cheers.
Yes, and I definitely find something new every time I read it. Stuff that is interesting to me, like a certain character that I find their story really compelling the one time I read it, and then the next time it's somebody else. Like, just it's got so many layers, and it's so interesting. And I actually started reading it every year after I read these books when I was in Scotland. So I was, I was working in Scotland in schools with a group of people, and it was pretty rough. So naturally, I ran to stories, and this was one of my favorites. And I actually got a audiobook read by a guy named Rob Inglis.
Yes.
He's amazing.
They're so good.
All the songs, he sings them, and he does voices. And so I would listen to these audiobooks as I was falling asleep every night. And this really cool thing happened where I ended up listening to The Return of the King during Lent. And it just... yeah. And it just so happened that it was Good Friday when I listened to Mount Doom.
Well, it doesn't get any more.
I know, and so I'm
More
sort
appropriate
of
than that.
yeah. And as a religious person, it was not lost on me. Tolkien was a Catholic, and he knew what he was doing with all of that stuff.
For
And
sure.
yeah, so basically, I was like, I can't believe that I've listened to Rob Inglis reading a chapter, and I call that prayer. Weird. Like, so basically, I just I listened to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's a genius, and just I just wrote a bunch of stuff about it and about how I relate to the characters and all that. And because that was a really rough year, Frodo was my character that year that I thought about. And I was like, oh
awesome.
my gosh.
Love it.
Just one of those things where
Did you have someone as your Sam?
I didn't.
Rob Inglis.
Rob Inglis was
Yeah.
my Sam.
Okay. I was about to say.
Everybody needs a Sam.
I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, so that...
Ew.
Squeeze the knee of your Sam if they are nearby.
Yes, it's fine.
Oh my gosh.
All right, calm down.
Rob
You two
Inglis,
love
where's your knee? No, but yeah, so and also just the chapter with the Grey Havens is very relevant as well if you're of a religious nature like I am, because you kind of, your life can suck, and I've kind of talked about this a little bit, where I'm like, life is hard when you worry too much about everything, and it's kind of like, well, don't worry, this life doesn't have to be amazing. There's something else. Don't worry. You'll go home eventually, and you'll be all right. And you can stand on the ship and look back at everybody and smile, and then
I'm
go
gonna cry.
off into the distance. So,
And there are white shores on the horizon.
right, yeah,
White shore and beyond.
and a swift sunrise.
Far green
Oh my,
sunrise.
oh my gosh. Yep. So
Damn.
yes, I do not long for death, but I long for paradise. So
That's fair.
gets to me, yeah, and just the man, and that whole thing about how the people who save the world don't really get to experience it to its full, like when you've made that kind of sacrifice and you're too damaged,
Yeah, that was
So-
like one of the earliest examples of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're just kind of like, dang, man, you did all this stuff and you basically completely broke your mind and yourself, and you're just damaged beyond repair. But there's a better place that you can go. It's not just this world. So, obviously, my connection with this story is very, very personal and kind of sad.
Very deep connection.
Yes. It
profound.
was my childhood, and these characters were with me in hard times. So
That's really special. For
Thank you
of
for
course,
sharing that.
I've been sharing a lot of weird stuff on this podcast recently. Like yesterday, last time we recorded, I just gushed about how the Elephant Man. I connected with it because of my neuroses.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything. So.
Oh, come here.
No.
Aww.
It's,
Fresh.
love you, Hannah.
Oh.
All right.
So I hear that there's a Bombadil Goldberry erotica out there. No, I'm just kidding.
Why would you?
What a left turn!
This is what I'm like.
I
know
know
this.
that's really starting to zig. I thought I was going to zag. What?
I'm all for it. It's
I'm
fine. I'm all for it.
All
In a
right.
deep locked cabinet, Tolkien study,
man.
there was discovered knowledge.
Well, that oh no,
Oh my god, that sounds like a parody short that I really want to watch.
no.
I mean,
We'll cover
parody?
Thomas's
Oh, no.
we'll cover Thomas's eyes and play
It's not real. I made it up.
Okay, I was about to say.
No,
I made it up because I made you all sad.
you have to understand how like the way that you can take that when you also consider the theory that Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are a self-insertion of Tolkien and his wife into the world.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Nice.
Like
Vera, I love it.
All right.
Those characters, like, he loves her so much.
right?
Yeah.
So fresh.
Yeah.
So,
Moving
Maggie?
on from my double
From
whammy
that.
of making y'all uncomfortable.
no, you're good. You're good. So, Maggie, would you like to share your journey through Tolkien?
Yeah, so compared to the rest of you, I am basically a noob, an absolute noob.
Welcome.
That's absolutely fine. We'd like a fresh perspective.
Yeah, so coming from somebody who hasn't like been involved with the Lord of the Rings for very long, I obviously kind of grew up with it around me. My brother was super obsessed with it. I had a best friend who she read it when she was really young, and she always tried to talk to me about it, but I was like, this sounds boring, and my small child mind does not want to listen to this right now. I was never really a reader growing up. Like, I just could not sit still and read, and so The Lord of the Rings would have been way too much for me. But I, if anybody ever made a reference, I usually knew what they were talking about. The song that they play at the very end of all of it,
Oh yeah, the Grey Havens, Into the West.
that song, I didn't know where it came from. No. But I would, I don't want to cry, please don't. I didn't know where it came from, but every single night, like if I was having a bad night and couldn't sleep, I would put that song on to put myself to sleep. Because it's just so soothing and sweet and soft. And it wasn't really until
Oh, yeah. It's spreading.
I actually watched the Hobbit movies before I read any of the books. I know that's sinful.
Get the fuck out.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We're not gonna judge.
No.
We're not gonna judge.
No.
Okay. No.
And
Continue.
so it wasn't really until Thomas and I met and started dating that I've always been into fantasy. Obviously, I'm obsessed with things like Kingdom Hearts and like fantasy video games. But it wasn't until we started dating that I'm like, okay, this is something you're obsessed with. I might as well try to learn what you're talking about. And a lot of my information I just got from you gushing about it to me. And it wasn't until like a year or two ago that we finally read through the whole thing together.
Well, we
Wow.
started as part of, because I was reading them every year. The year we got engaged, we started reading through The Hobbit, and I actually read it to you.
Yeah, so you read the physical book to me. Yeah, and then we would start doing this thing because we would carpool in the mornings, and I just cannot sit down and read. Like, my mind just will not let me. We started listening to the audiobooks on the way to work in the morning.
Same ones, Rob Inglis.
Which are incredible. They're so fun to listen to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got through the whole thing, listening to it together. I don't understand how you do it every single year. Like, they're amazing books. They're beautiful. Just... It's a lot to handle every single year, but that's fine.
It's a labor of love. It's a labor of passion.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, yeah, we read through it together, and every single time you read through it and you have something new to say about it, I get all that information from you. Like, I feel like I learn new things through you, and that's fine by me. But what we started doing after we went through it the first time, we do this incredible thing with his mom.
Oh, is it what I think it is?
Yes.
Oh,
so
boy, here we go.
every single year, they both read it over every single year. And once they are both finished, sometime in January, the three of us and sometimes your sister, we all get together. We sit down. We take an entire Saturday off. Starting at like 7 a.m., we watch every single movie, minus the Hobbit movies, of course. We watch every single Lord of the Rings movie, the extended version.
Yes! Already a huge plus.
We just sit on the couch and we eat all 7 Hobbit meals.
breakfast, second
I
breakfast.
should have brought my mug that you
Oh,
gave
that's right.
me.
That's right.
Yeah.
I got Hannah a mug for Christmas that has the entire list of all 7 Hobbit meals of the day and at what time.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Love
Breakfast,
it.
second breakfast, 11 C's, after
Luncheon,
luncheon, afternoon tea,
dinner,
and supper.
He knows about them, doesn't he?
I wouldn't count on it. Throws him an apple.
I wouldn't count on it.
So even though I watch the movies every single year, it's not lost on me coming into this still pretty brand new. It's not lost on me how in-depth and crazy this whole world building is. And I know that obviously movies and books don't always line up, but it still shocks me that going through it for the first time, how much I got out of it, how much Tolkien put into this, and just how in-depth you really can go. It's incredible. It really is.
And I think the reason why, like, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it was such a huge success is because almost everybody who was working on the project were super fans of the films, trying to bring this to life. With even Saruman's actor, Christopher Lee, the late Christopher Lee, bless that man, one of my favorite actors of all time.
The late. He passed away.
Yeah.
Aw, when?
Some years ago.
A few years ago.
Oh,
Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically,
excuse me.
no, Hannah. It's okay. It's okay.
There.
Okay.
I'm all right.
But Christopher Lee.
I shall be all right.
But Christopher Lee actually being the only one working on the project that actually met Tolkien,
him, yeah.
that had met Tolkien, and like Thomas,
Holy
made the effort to read the Lord of the Rings books every single year. So he was probably the biggest expert on Tolkien going into the making of that movie more than anything. And he originally wanted to play Gandalf.
Yeah,
No,
that's
they
right.
asked him to, I think, and didn't he say like, "No, I can't
I don't remember.
do something
there
else"?
was
He was
some
like,
sort
he was
of
like, "I
where-
want to do somebody else because I can't do justice to Gandalf." I think.
Yeah, there was the possibility that he could have played Gandalf, and that ended up being Ian McKellen.
Which
And-
which honestly worked out for the best.
Because Ian is
so.
May.
I think I'm the only person here who actually has met Ian McKellen.
Did you
I'm
shake his
jealous.
hand?
I wish I gave him a bottle of wine and said break a leg when he was alongside Patrick Stewart, but
You gave Ian a bottle of wine. You gave him. You are best friends
Was
now.
was it good? Was it Sutter Home or something, or was it good?
wait, what?
The wine
The
you
wine.
gave him.
Well, I forget if it was wine or craft beer from Milwaukee, but we forget. Okay, no.
Either way, you were on a level to give him alcohol. Like,
No, okay. Here's the story. Just to track off from Tolkien a minute, just because we're talking about one of
Yeah,
the
I
actors.
hid in his limousine.
I've mentioned this story on the podcast before,
Yeah.
but I basically met Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart at the same time while I was in New York City when they were doing Waiting for Godot. I got to see that show live.
Oh my god!
It was part of a spring break trip
Excuse me.
again. Hannah, I've told this story.
she's gone.
I know.
She's gone, children. She's gone. But basically, I took a spring break trip with several different people from UW Milwaukee. We went to New York. We had some connections through our theater professors for people waiting in New York. So we got to do some amazing things. We took a backstage tour of the Phantom of the Opera. I got to wear the Red Death mask, which was one of my favorite pieces of costume ever. We got to see Phantom of the Opera on the last day. We got to see Sleep No More, which was that dance interpretive piece of the Scottish play set in an entire hotel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's an amazing experience. I highly recommend.
Do you wander around and see things in the hotel?
Yeah, you wander around and see things in the hotel while you're wearing masks, and everybody is quiet the entire time.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's such an amazing and
immersive theater.
exactly. And while we were going for Waiting for Godot, one of the professors that went with us, rest in peace, Pamela Rayberg. We miss you very, very much. But she needed help because we brought gifts in order to give to select people, and she knew people working at the theater, and so we were just going to go straight into the back door, hand it off. We weren't going to approach them because we knew they had work to do. I was the one that helped her. And they're like, just let them know we're from here, and then we said break a leg. As soon as we were about to leave to get back in line, in comes Stewart and McKellen. And so we got to hand it to them personally, and me being 21 years old and just starstruck, and I want to say so much, I just said, hello, break a leg, can't wait to see. I like
Majestic. Oh.
it's a memory I hold really good in my heart. But oh god, we got so off track on that. But yeah, like a big reason for that is because like McKellen as Gandalf was just so great. Like the movies and the books have like created such a huge fandom. Honestly, I think the movies helped a lot with like reintroducing like Lord of the Rings to younger generations.
Right. Yeah.
I know I benefited off of that.
Yeah.
It made it more interesting for me too, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And like we said earlier, like the impact it has on like the world at large is stunning. There are people constantly talking about his works, college classes analyzing the original source material, and even teaching like some of the languages as actual foreign language credits for schools.
Amazing.
At the college that we went to, unfortunately, we both graduated before it happened, but there is a professor. He's a what is
History professor.
no, not history.
No.
What is Brett?
Linguistics?
Anthropology. There was an
Anthropology.
anthropology professor. Biggest dork I've ever met in my life. He's so sweet. But what he wanted to do, he started a tabletop club, first of all.
Nice.
But what he wanted to do was do an anthropology class based on mostly Lord of the Rings, because you can really dive into the culture and like all this stuff. Even though it's fantasy, you can really dive into just the culture of the people in the books.
Oh, absolutely. Just like, even with just like the various races, but also the different cultures of humans, because you have the people of Gondor, you have the people of Rohan, you have the subtle different villages, like the people of Lake Town and all that from the Hobbit material.
Like, I failed anthropology, but I totally would have taken that class. That would have been great. I would have failed, but it would have been great.
Absolutely. That would have been a fun one. Are you kidding me? I'd take that in a heartbeat. And like, one of the biggest impacts is like with like all the works and everything like that, which honestly, I think for us living in Milwaukee, we're truly blessed in a way, because this city houses the biggest collection of works by Tolkien. So
Field trip!
we do need to plan that one of these days. All honestly,
What is that again?
I mentioned this in the
Marquette, yeah?
Yep, it's at Marquette University. Marquette University. Yeah, Hannah.
Oh, also, Wheaton College, about 20 minutes from where I live, has the Wade Center, which has tons of stuff from all of the Inklings.
Oh,
Like, they have C.S. Lewis's pipe there, and
That's right.
his pen, and the wardrobe that stood in his house that he based the wardrobe from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on.
Let's break in
I
and
have
get into
pictures
it.
of me. I have pictures of me as a kid, like from behind, like opening it up and going inside. Like, it's just
beautiful.
You're allowed
All
to
the
go
relevance.
in
Yes. Well, you're allowed to stick your head in, or nobody saw me do it. So
So that's fine.
Wow,
I think they have Tolkien's. It's either C.S. Lewis or Tolkien's desk.
that's amazing.
Lick it.
It's under. I would. I totally would, because I love licking things to claim them as my own, which I probably shouldn't do because of the epidemic.
Thomas, we need
but
to stop them.
No,
Yeah.
bro. No.
it was under.
letting
It was
go.
under
This is
glass, so
Okay.
you couldn't touch it. But
Licking the glass is good enough. It's close enough.
yeah, licking the glass is good enough.
I love your enthusiasm, but I have to ask, please don't lick the desk. Please don't.
Wait until like this is all over, and then like
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But yeah, like I discovered that because my little brother, who is a English major at UW Whitewater, he, as part of like his class trip or anything like that, got to view Marquette's collection of Tolkien's works, which includes various notes that Tolkien had taken during his time with the Inklings, that has writing that has both his and C.S. Lewis's handwriting on it.
Handwriting.
I know.
Write things down. It will be valuable.
Write everything down.
Exactly. And I'm like, I want to see this collection. I'm jealous he got to see that collection.
We
Because
should
it
go.
only opens up every once in a while, right?
Yeah, there are showings on like Marquette's website of dates. I do want to plan a field trip, because honestly, that would be absolutely
Please,
stunning.
if anyone from Marquette listens to this, we'd like a private viewing, please.
Please,
Thank you.
from all of us at the General Geekery Podcast,
Yes,
please.
yes, indeed.
I promise I won't lick anything.
Yep. I also promise I won't lick anything.
Okay, Thomas, we
I
got
might,
to be
I
on
might,
point to make
I
sure
might
they don't
sniff
lick anything.
it, but I won't lick it.
Sniffing is fine.
Sniffing is fine. Okay. I have a couple of
Anyways.
questions for
Yeah,
y'all, like
please.
nerdy questions and stuff. First, have you seen the movie that came out, Tolkien biopic?
Not yet.
No.
Okay. It is excellent. I enjoyed it so much. It'll get your heart. It kind of shows the sort of his life story and some of the like you can totally see there's a couple of scenes where he is in the trenches in World War I and going up over the top and going across, and there's basically he had trench fever when he was there, so he was just like delirious and everything, and he the smoke and the bombs and things, he like thought he saw dragons, and there was like the like people riding by on horses, they seem to have like black smoke billowing off of them and stuff, and so this is all probably a poetic license, but it was really cool because like just showing this like sort of this sensitive artist in this horrible place, and you can kind of see how that that informed his creation of Mordor, because like you know you've got the mustard gas and stuff, and it's this barren landscape you're running across. The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume, you know, like
Absolutely horrible.
and it was about him and these kids that he was friends with, and kind of like the precursor to the Inklings for him, where there's these four of them who they want to be artists and just be better men in general, and just
he
like
was the only one who made it out.
I think one other person did, but they lost contact or something. But yeah, his like he lost so many people in the war. Like it's just I don't know, like it's like these like sad lives and trauma creates just beautiful artists. I feel like
It's crazy the more that you actually learn about Tolkien himself and his experiences during the war, but World War I itself. So much of his work is just deeply, deeply informed by that experience. It's crazy. I have very strong opinions about Lord of the Rings as what genre and the kind of story it's trying to tell. Tolkien godfathered the fantasy genre into existence. But I think it's difficult to strictly call the Lord of the Rings fantasy, because fantasy as a genre didn't really exist until he created it. Lord of the Rings is a war novel.
Yeah.
It really is.
And you know what's interesting too is there's a lot of battles and sieges and things that take place in the book, but he doesn't go into a lot of detail about it. I think just because, you know, he knew all that stuff and just couldn't bring himself to write it. Like just the war
but
impacted him so much.
Yeah, but even then, with like the words that he did put from with his pen onto paper, like you could tell the emotion like coming from it.
Because having to put yourself through all that again.
Or like the description of Helm's Deep is like
it's
like
poetry.
Yeah. It's just like,
It's
they went here, and there were people over the wall and things like that. But it is kind of, it seems almost like it's more of an omniscient point of view as opposed to being in the mind of a point of view character, kind of.
Yeah.
Which, if you, it seemed like he needed to do that.
And you not only get the perspective of being in the midst of those huge scale battles and everything, which also with the machinery of war that he describes on the plains of Pelennor or coming up against the walls of Minas Tirith is like if you read it just surface level, you don't go into like, oh yeah, well that's obviously ballista and catapults, and because this is all very ancient and medieval. He could very easily just be describing tanks. Which
there's a vagueness to his words, but at the same time, it's told with such like emotion and just like grim reality, like it's left up to our imaginations, but at the same time, like you can't shake that sense of dread, fear, and just.
But then also, like you get that perspective of the hugeness, the scale of the conflicts and everything, but then also the perspective of Sam and Frodo making their way across the shattered landscape, not only Mordor itself, but everything leading up to it. But like the idea of like two soldiers just trudging through the blasted fields of France during World War One, being nothing left that is whole.
You can tell he loved his brothers.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No.
This is a very emotional episode.
No, it's understandable. Honestly, and like with that description, I think like. I think, honestly, the film kind of captured that at the end of, like, Two Towers when they took Sam and Frodo to Ithilien.
Yeah.
Like, that entire description, like, fit that scene in my mind, like, perfectly.
Which that isn't actually in the book.
You know, I know it's not.
Actually.
I know it's not, but it's almost crazy to think, like the filmmakers, when they were adapting, like, the books to film, like, they had, like, that almost that exact same, like, image in mind of like Ithilien in ruins.
Yeah,
and that's actually an appreciation I gained on later readings versus when I first read through the books. Because when I first read through the books, the second half of the Two Towers and the second half of Return of the King, you know, as Frodo and Sam are making their way through this landscape, it's really difficult to get through, especially as a young reader. It's just like it just drags and drags.
Yeah,
which I understand now.
On a scale of 1 to Lord of the Rings, how far did you walk today?
It's the point because he's capturing that the weight of being surrounded by this war-ravaged countryside.
Yep.
And he's reliving it, and you're reliving it with him.
And with that's another point of why Tolkien is just an absolute genius, because this part of the books that a lot of people struggle with, like, oh, it just drags on and everything. The fact that he was able to get that element in there with his words and with the feeling of how it flows on the page, like, the way that he just kind of makes you feel things from a piece of paper is incredible. Yeah. Like, the guy's a genius.
Yeah.
The way I... Oh, sorry. You talk first.
Yeah, and that whole thing, the journey part, it seems kind of endless. And just also when you add in just that... The weight of the ring as well, just it gets worse and worse and worse. It's kind of like, I feel like no matter who you are, you have a ring in your life, you know, like something that weighs you down or holds you back or just makes life hard, you know. So we can all kind of put ourselves in that role, and we all need a Sam.
Yeah. Like,
touch the knee of your Sam if they're nearby.
Sam is the only reason he got up that mountain.
Absolutely.
Sam is the real hero. It's fine.
Absolutely. And like and I think the reason like why those moments like stood out so much was because like they were descriptive, but in the way like when I read them, like they felt like you're like the monologues that you have in your mind, like as you go through like your experiences. Just like every single word, it's like it's almost like if you go through like a difficult time in your life, and in your mind, it's like time slows down, and in your mind, like subconsciously, like you have like those little moments of like just talking to yourself and just like being descriptive about every single little thing.
Internal monologues are the worst.
They can be rough. They can be really rough, and that's how I interpreted it when I read through that for like the second or third time when I was going through those books. So that's how I saw it now, and that hit me more personally than I think a lot of the battles did. Really, was just the moments where they were just walking through the landscapes and just taking a moment to like let the scenery just affect them.
Yep. I have one more thing. You told me something. It was, I think, after Merchant of Venice one night or something. You were talking about the names of the hobbits.
Oh
Tell
my
me
gosh.
Tell me that tidbit.
Okay.
I want to hear it again.
Okay, so Maggie already said Tolkien's a genius, and he is, but there's so many layers to his brilliance.
Oh boy.
So probably, arguably, more than anything else, what influenced the creation of everything that he made was his love of language. Like, he created all of the mythology of the Silmarillion in the trenches because he created all these stories as an excuse for the languages that he had already made to exist. Like, he made these languages and is like, these need to exist for a reason, so now I'm going to create the reason. Like, where did these come from? Well, let me tell you. And being the Elvish languages that he created, Quenya and Sindarin, and there's so much more to The Lord of the Rings as a book, as a text that exists, that even deepens that one of the really cool things about watching the appendices of the Lord of the Rings movies is you get the really cool sense that the filmmakers wanted to create the movies as if they were archaeologists and anthropologists. That they wanted to create this world and display it on film as if they were basically creating a documentary of this world that they were digging up and discovering of Middle-earth.
That really does come across in, like, the set design with, like, all the different places as well.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is that is also how Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings. He wrote it as if it was a translation into English of an ancient Middle-earth text that he had discovered. So all of the names of the characters, just focusing on the four hobbits, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, those aren't actually the names of those individuals. They are their names translated into English.
Wow.
The language, the common tongue spoken by the people of Middle-earth is called Westron. And if you go through Tolkien's notes and all the other material that exists out there, you discover that their real names are something else. That they have names in their own language that when Tolkien wrote the novels, he translated all of their names into what the meaning equivalent would be in English.
Oh, that's right.
So, like, I'm trying to remember the names. I should have refreshed before this, but like, Bilbo, is in Western is actually Bilba. And so he changed the A to an O in the quote unquote English translation.
The Western,
because in English, O has more of a masculine name connotation, and A has more of a feminine name connotation. And so he just made that change because there wasn't an etymological meaning for that name. But others, like Sam has his own actual Western name, and Merry and Pippin and Frodo, they all do.
Just to check, are these the ones?
Yes, that's it. So Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin are actually Maura, Ban, Razar, and Kali.
Thank you, Google.
Thank you, Google.
Nice.
Those are their actual names. And so then their
Those
names...
sound badass.
Right?
Yeah!
Oh, yeah.
So their actual names
Hail,
are
Mazza.
those.
Yes.
And...
Where is Kali? He's at the pub.
Yes. And so the fact... and it doesn't stop there. Like, it's not as if he just wrote the whole book, the whole story of The Lord of the Rings, where he takes all the names and puts them into English. No. A lot of the names are left in their quote-unquote natural languages. All the Elven names are not translated into English. They're in Elvish.
Yeah.
All of the Rohirrim names are left in their own language.
Right.
Because the book, The Lord of the Rings, the text, right, that Tolkien was quote-unquote translating, is supposed to be the Red Book. Bilbo and Frodo's account of the events of the War of the Ring.
Yep.
So, The Lord of the Rings is all of these events from the perspective of the hobbits, where all the things that would have been left in their own languages are left in their own languages.
Yeah, like the Elvish songs.
Yeah, everything is because that's what a ordinary scribe of these events would have done. He would have, left the Elvish as Elvish, the Rohirrim as Rohirrim, the Orcish as Orcish,
Yep.
but everything in common, he writes down as his own language, and so Tolkien keeps the quote unquote the what's the word the integrity of the quote unquote original text
Bloody hell.
Yep.
It's too much.
by translating the Hobbit's perspective into the common English reader's own language, but leaving the Elvish and the Dwarvish and the Orcish and the Rohirrim as is, so that the experience of a modern English reader would be the same as it would be for any Hobbit who read Bilbo and Frodo's book.
What a
Yep.
nerd.
Right?
Too much brain for his own good.
And that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I knew Thomas had this entire encyclopedia of knowledge of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and everything stashed in his mind palace. I knew it was going to come out.
Mind Palace. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Gosh.
That was insane.
Yeah.
I had come across that a little bit, but for some reason, in my mind, I was thinking about the naming of the five wizards, before coming to Middle Earth from their original plane.
Huh.
Yeah.
But, there was a tangent on that. Oh, Hannah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Well, just as one of our last things here, I'm always interested to know where, if you lived in Middle Earth, where would you want to live / come from, Maggie?
Either the Shire for sure, because the amount of just relaxation and quiet and just beautiful landscaping, would love that. Or Rivendell.
Ooh.
One of those two. They're just so magical and peaceful, and just the chaotic world that we already live in, especially just being America.
Yeah.
Just the idea of being somewhere quiet and just no insanity, no stress is just a dream, an absolute dream for me, for sure.
I mean, for me, it's the Shire, hands down, all the way. There's nowhere in that world that I would rather be. Everything else is super exciting and beautiful and majestic and but I don't think there's anywhere in that world I would rather call home.
It's the oasis.
Yeah. Which I think is one of the points that Tolkien makes in The Hobbit is, Bilbo goes on this whole journey because he has to go through a transformation, right? He has to be not complacent anymore, which is something that you do start to understand about the hobbits is that they really have no conception of what's going on beyond their own borders. They don't have a clue, which is partly why they're so peaceful, but it's also partly why they're so easily taken advantage of at the end of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So for Bilbo to go, grow, change, and then come back and have a deeper appreciation for his home, I think is part of the whole point of Bilbo as a character, which is why I love the Shire so much, is being able to see it through his perspective is like, this as for all the other stuff out there that is so great and glorious and dangerous, like this is where you really want to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Donald.
All right. So, obviously, I would love to be in the Shire just as well, but at the same time, knowing the kind of person I am and, like, how I always do, I've always like, related myself more akin to that of a dwarf. Because dwarves are ambitious. They are probably the most ambitious race in the entire of Lord of the Rings. But not so much on, like, the greedy side or anything like that, but, like, ambitions for those around you, for your fellow man, and everything like that. Like, I've always related, like, myself similar to Thorin Oakenshield, in a sense. Just someone who's proud, is very, very proud of where he comes from, what he is, and is ambitious, like, not for himself, but for those around him as well. And although he succumbs to like anger and madness or everything like that, he still has the stubborn personality of a dwarf and everything like that. It's not as it's not as blatant or like aggressive as like some other examples. Sorry, Gimli. Sorry.
I can see you as a dwarf for sure.
Yeah, me too.
So,
but either
which dwarvish place though?
That is a very good. That is a very good
There
question.
Are several.
Because let's see, you have the Iron Hills, you have Moria before it was retaken by the goblins. You have
Lonely Mountain.
The Lonely Mountain. I would probably say Lonely Mountain post Smaug.
Okay, so as
like-
opposed to pre-Smaug?
As opposed to pre-Smaug, like the
Okay.
rebuilding of the ancient dwarven kingdom.
Yes.
And
So much ancestral pride.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
exactly. Like just the thought of like creating or recreating something like holds a lot for me. Like of course I'm a content creator. So of course
for sure.
it's in my nature. But yeah,
I love that.
Maggie, you
Well,
had a
just
question?
real quick, as a tiny bit of crossover, are you a Slytherin?
I'm a Ravenclaw.
Oh, Ravenclaw. Surprising. I was going to say, because you mentioned the ambition thing. I thought, all right, interesting. Because we're both Hufflepuffs, which is why we would choose the Shire.
Hufflepuffs! What
Yay!
Two hands. There we go. Two hands for one. It's fine.
Represent.
What? Yeah.
Oh my-
Okay.
Nerds. Love it.
Indeed. But also at the same time, like
You're surrounded, Ravenclaw.
I'm a guy in the corner.
You know?
Oh no, now he's leaving. Come back.
No.
But also like other than that, like I love the culture and the kingdom of Rohan.
Yeah.
Like
True.
the horse masters hold a very special place in my heart. They were what captured me so much in the movies. Like the theme of the Rohirrim and Rohan like whole
It's so
is
heroic. It's so epic.
Yes. me and Thomas were humming that thing almost before every single performance of Titus Andronicus.
Yeah.
Really?
Like almost, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
quite a few times.
quite a few times
Nice.
we've done that.
Fresh.
But
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out why you would do that.
I don't know why.
You two did that.
No.
I don't think it had anything to do with the show itself.
It didn't have
Oh,
anything.
it wasn't to get into character?
No.
That makes no sense.
No, it wasn't to get into character. Like, we would sometimes randomly
evil
talk about.
bastards.
We would sometimes talk. we would sometimes talk about random stuff, and then all of a sudden, somehow we get to Lord of the Rings and the Rohirrim, and then all of a sudden, we have the urge to do the song
because the music is so good, and it just we're nerds.
Yep.
Absolutely,
we're nerds.
So
it
cheers
just
to that.
happens.
Yeah. So as much as the Shire is so appealing, everything like that, the Kingdom of Rohan and the dwarves are what I relate myself to more than her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rohan all the way. I would be a shield maiden.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Just to ride horses in the fields. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's freedom. Freedom is very important to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Majestic.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And if she killed a ring wraith, automatically,
hell yeah, brother!
give her a kingdom.
I am no man.
Okay, so we didn't get to talking about it, and we don't really have to get into it if we don't have time. But one of the things that I absolutely love about Lord of the Rings, a lot of people, and we kind of talked about this a little bit last night, but a lot of people are just like, there are no strong women in this, and it's such a dude's book.
Excuse me.
Okay. No. Okay. People trying to say that the I am no man thing isn't actually a strong woman thing to say, ridiculous. It absolutely is. All of the women that are in this story are strong, incredible in their own way, and they are feisty and beautiful, and it is not a sexist book. I love all the women in this book for how strong and powerful they are.
I fear Galadriel.
Good grief.
Do not cross her.
Queen.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Galadriel, in the movies, all those scenes that are revolving around them being, with her, it's all about really Galadriel and how she helps them. When she comes out with her man, he is the arm candy.
Yeah.
He is the arm candy.
Pretty much.
Even though she still totally completely outshines everybody there.
You want to know a weird fact?
It's
apparently, Kate Blanchett, who played Galadriel, she did a stage play of Lord of the Rings, during in the 80s or something like that. She was Frodo.
Really?
wow.
Really?
As a youth.
One of the random facts I found one day.
Wow. But
interesting.
yes.
That's very interesting.
Yes. Galadriel just she's sort of like that guiding spirit, like the mom, who just the wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
The wisdom and the incredible power just from her presence.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, every female character in the films that are prominent, Galadriel, Éowyn, Arwen. Thank you. Why did I say Éowyn? I am an idiot.
Éowyn is
Éowyn.
Here it is, yeah.
No.
Éowyn
Éowyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, what am I saying? Oh yeah, that's right. Rohan, right.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm hyped up on caffeine.
That's fine. That's
It's
fine.
okay, you're good.
But yeah, all of them are strong people. There's a reason why they were given such prominence. Even though Arwen's made a little bit to no sense in the film adaptation, but I can put that aside.
But even Arwen, just a lot of people really like to pick on her role in it because she gave up her family for a man, which I can kind of see what you're saying, but at the same time, the amount of strength you have to give up to not only give up your family, but to give up immortality in paradise.
Yeah.
Because you love it. It's not even a man. She gives it up for somebody she loves, a person she loves, and she knows that they need each other.
That took decades to form. A lot of people forget that around the time Lord of the Rings is happening, Aragorn is in his 90s.
Yep. Yep.
They needed each other. They have so
I'm 87.
much.
I'm not old.
But yeah.
She gave her spot on the boat to Frodo. Yeah.
That's incredibly hard. It just forget that he's a man for a second. You give that up for somebody you love because that's what you do when you love somebody. It's that's incredible strength to give up your family and immortality for some other life. It's just
All right.
crazy.
And just one last thing, that how important that was for Tolkien himself, in how much, you kind of touched on this at the very beginning, with just how much he loved his own wife.
Yeah.
And the reflections that he wove through the Middle-earth story with Aragorn and Arwen and Beren and Luthien, and they have Beren and Luthien inscribed on their tombstones.
Yeah.
Love puke.
He put so much into that because of how much that meant to him.
Ronald and Edith forever.
Yeah.
And it translated well into the films as well. Well, the live action films, not the animated one, unfortunately.
Oh gosh.
I praised Ralph Bakshi's version for several different things. One of them being John Hurt as Aragorn. You nailed it on the head, my dude. Nailed it on the head.
Sure.
But at the same time, like the writing of the characters in the live action films was done much better and much more faithful to the original source. So, yeah. In short, this is what Tolkien has done. He has created generations upon generations upon generations of geeks nerding out over his work, whether they're first introduced through the original novels or introduced through the films, and by osmosis go into the novels past that. Even if you're just like his impact on just culture in general is astounding.
I mean, the fantasy genre exists
Because of him.
in part because of Tolkien.
Nice.
I mean, if you're gonna narrow it down to where it all comes from, it's Lord of the Rings and it's Conan the Barbarian. America and England made at the same time. Conan and Bilbo were born about the same time in the 30s. It's crazy if you line it up. That's a whole nother episode. We don't have to talk about that now.
That's fine.
But so much of it is due just to his work and what he created and how much there was for people to delve into.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And so, because of that, Mr. Tolkien, all of you involved with the process, we raise a glass. We thank you for giving us all of this wonderful world that we love so much and that continues to exist today. So,
It's like that scene at the end of the movie.
we're raising our glasses in the air right now.
All right, everybody,
we are not posers.
Click, click.
Yes.
Cheers.
Mine's empty, but
Score.
So that has been episode. What episode is it?
we don't know because we
In the
don't know when
teens.
we're gonna.
Okay.
Wait, this is the next one.
Oh no!
This is 20.
No. This will be 21 because 20 was the episode that came before this. That was when we were talking about
Hitchcock.
Yeah, we were talking about Alfred Hitchcock that time.
Hitchcock.
So yeah, this has been episode 21 of the General Geekery Podcast.
Hey.
Thomas, Maggie, thank you guys again for joining us. This has been
So fun.
This has been so great having you guys on. Can we find you guys on social media in any sort of tandem to follow you guys at, or do you guys prefer not to?
Well, we do have, we don't post a lot, but we do have a gross couple Instagram if you want to follow us.
I already tagged it in our post. So
and it's
there
actually
you go.
a reference to Lord of the Rings.
We're going on an adventure.
Yeah, we're going on an adventure.
Underscores between every word.
Yeah.
Yep, indeed.
And then if you feel so inclined, my personal Instagram, if you feel like following me, is connected through there, but you don't have to.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming Thomas is okay with all of that and nothing else.
Yeah, nothing really. What?
No.
What?
Unless you want to promote something, you have anything coming up or?
Yeah, what's going on in your artistic life?
I don't have any big things coming up as far as plays or anything. I have a basically dead YouTube channel, but I'm gonna try and resurrect it in the future.
Because you're out of school for the next 4 weeks.
Oh yeah, because of the coronavirus, all K-12 schools, public and private, are by governor mandate are shut down for 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have a little bit more time on my hands, and that was one thing I was gonna try to
Let's
do.
do
So
it.
it's not there yet, but
Let's start the Silmarillion book club.
there we go. Yeah, look for it in the future. It's This Spoken World on YouTube. This Spoken World.
All right.
What kind of things do you do on that?
I have a few things in the works, but what is there currently, it's a little outdated, but what's there currently is I talk about fairy tales.
Very nice.
And mostly what I've done is work my way through a few of the old Grimm's stories.
The Brothers Grimm stories.
Was this pre beard?
I believe that I am still bearded in some of them.
But you were a wee baby.
That was back in college. Yeah.
Absolutely horrifying.
He was but a wee lad.
Babyface Thomas, horrifying.
Oh God.
I do look several years younger.
The naked face.
I look like a teenager. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh man,
It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
One
be all right.
shameless little plug. If you do follow me on Instagram and you need a graphic designer, I got you.
All right.
Definitely.
Oh,
So,
we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch.
okay, sweet.
So
As always, you can find myself, Hannah, every Monday night at 7:30, rolling dice with my party at twitch.tv/loadeddiceadventures. And you can follow me on Instagram at Pythian Legume.
And you guys can follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, as well as on twitch.tv as well at RyuzakiMK7. You can follow the podcast on social media at Gen Geek Podcast on
We tweet as well.
on Twitter and on Gen Geek Podcast on Twitter and Facebook, and General Geekery on Instagram. So this has been episode 21 of the General Geekery Podcast, where we talked all about Tolkien. Thomas,
Yeah.
Maggie, thank you guys again for joining us.
It has been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure having you on. I'm so glad we finally got you on. Yes. So for Thomas, for Maggie, for Hannah, I'm Donald, and until next time, guys, keep on reading Tolkien, and so we must go into the West. But always remember, keep your geek on.
Always.
Clink, clink, everyone.
Clink, clink.
Cheers.
Clink, clink.
Cool.
Later, guys.
That was great.